Welcome in, everyone, to Beyond the Tape, brought to you by 32 Beat Writers. I'm Zach Hyduk, and today I have with me our newest team member here at 32 Beat Writers, TJ. How's it going, man?
Man, it's great to be here, Zach. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm so pumped to be getting started here with 32 Beat Writers, and I'm just excited to talk ball and talk a little NFL draft with you.
Yeah, I know. This is our first recording attempt to do that. Obviously, we've had tons of conversations here over the last little while. So, as we go through this, everybody, just bear with us as we work out any kinks. But it's going to be a good one today. I'm really excited about it. TJ, for those of you who don't know or haven't seen the intro video that we have on our Twitter profile, you should definitely go check that out at 32 Beat Writers on X. You can see that there. He does a very good job introducing himself. But TJ, you have a ton of experience when it comes to the NFL draft in general, and that's kind of what this show's going to be about. We're going to be utilizing you as our new college football and draft expert and analyst. You're going to the Senior Bowl with me here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to be just bringing everybody a ton of awesome draft content. So if you don't mind, just tell everybody a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. First started covering the draft leading up to the 2018 draft. I was still in college, but that was when I kind of decided to take, casual fan, following the NFL draft and take it to the next level. Try to take it a little bit more serious and do it in a professional manner. So that was the first year. My crown jewel of that year, Josh Allen, number one player in my big board. Not that I don't hold on to that one every day, but would have been really smart if I had Lamar at 2. But then continued to kind of follow down that track, graduated college, got into the world of play-by-play while I was in school, and I continued to do that on the side. A full-time video editor. That was what paid the bills and puts a roof over my head. But then launched my own YouTube channel to continue to talk about the NFL draft in January of 2021. We were all locked in our homes, and I needed some people to talk to and an outlet for the NFL draft that I didn't have after graduating college and losing my radio show. Due to graduation, not anything else. But just to make that clear, didn't want to get canceled too early here. So then continued to upload there on that platform and did all the way up until right before starting up here at 32 Beat Writers. So learned a lot and continuing to make it a more and more professional process. And ultimately, over the course of the years, you find the flaws in your process and where maybe you overvalued certain things, undervalued others. So we're continuing to learn, man. And that's why I'm super pumped about the Senior Bowl too. Like getting to see these guys up close, getting to talk to them too. That's been a huge part. That when you do this on your own, you're doing this on the side, you don't get to interview these guys. So you don't know the mental makeup, the personality. So I'm glad to be able to kind of check that box with some of those guys at the Senior Bowl. Plus, like, I can't wait to see Shamar Stewart. That's like one of the guys, like, I'm so pumped. 6'6", 290 at, like, there's just these freakish, uber athletic players, and I'm just so excited to be able to see them in person and beyond the tape, which fits perfectly with the name of the show.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm saying that, and I'm realizing we need to update the graphic there at the bottom. We do
For
all
sure.
this stuff here, and we learn everything as we go along. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's what you got there. But hey, we'll update that, and we'll maybe edit this out of the show. I don't know. We'll see.
We're setting up episode 2 to be an awesome sophomore year. We're taking our steps forward, right? We're getting the rookie mistakes out of the way. The developmental curve is on the upward.
Yeah, I think, and honestly, yeah, part of this is just we really wanted to get some content out to you guys here so that leading into Christmas, you had some stuff to chew on, some things to look forward to here. TJ is going to be doing a lot of work for us. He's going to be helping coordinate our articles and things that we're doing. He's going to be helping with like a big board and things on the website that'll coordinate with some of our other tools that we have. And when we drop the new site here in the next couple of months, just what he's bringing to the table and all the other tools that we have, they're going to coordinate really well together. And so whether you are super into fantasy or whether you just love the NFL draft and want to know what your team is going to do, 32 Beat Writers now, along with TJ, along for the ride here, is going to like just really help us hit all those things. And you mentioned the Senior Bowl, and yeah, we got confirmed that we're going to be on Radio Row, which is super awesome. Yeah. So we're going to be grabbing players. You and I are going to have some long days up and out the door and set up at 6 a.m. to start interviewing guys. And then we'll have the practices after that. It's going to be a pretty crazy week down there. And we're excited for that. And yeah, just seeing some of these guys it was funny because you stand next to some guys and you're like if it's a slot wide receiver, you're like,
Sure. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
if I
Mere
were
mortals.
I worked really hard, I could maybe kind of have his physique. Obviously, there's no way I would ever have Snowball's chance in hell of sniffing his athleticism. But you're like, that's not too whatever. And then you stand next to like the offensive lineman who's just this monster, and you're like, that is otherworldly. So
Yeah. Did you take any pictures with Devondre Sweat last year? That would have been the one I had to get.
no, I didn't. No, I did take a picture with Big Dom of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh,
So yeah.
Eagle fame. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was like right after all of that drama with him, like a month or two or whatever.
He's Sirianni's,
Yeah.
magic. Honestly, that's his magic charm.
Yeah, for the 30 seconds I had with him, though, he was pretty good dude. At least, again, the 30 seconds, he seemed really nice. Everybody says he's really nice, and that one weird thing that happened. So whatever. No hot takes on Big Dom here, but let's get into college football and some of the stuff that we're looking forward to, man, because that's what you're here for. And frankly, I need to be educated along with everybody else that we're going to be talking to here and who's going to be watching and listening here. I put out a poll the other day as to like what position Travis Hunter will play the majority of snaps at in the NFL. And the reason I did that, I actually was thinking about it and an article popped out talking about that exact thing. I don't know if you happen to see it. I'm trying to remember who put that out. One of the big draft guys. But Travis Hunter won the Heisman. He's a two-way player at cornerback and wide receiver. Most people know. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of anticipating wide receiver. So I put that poll out there, but 70% of the voters that we had, which is like of the 4,742 of you, thanks for voting, 70% said cornerback would be the most likely thing for him to play. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's pretty much been my take. I've been pounding the table for that, through this whole process. Part of it is he's 6'1", 185. You're just not going to see a whole lot of outside receivers with that body type. Not that he couldn't add a little bit of weight and make that work. And, we've also seen guys where, Tank Dell's 165 and he plays on the outside. So there's certainly outliers, and Travis Hunter has that it factor about him to be an outlier. But man, I just look at his ball skills, right? Like coming into this year, he was a little raw in zone coverage, but you just see the instincts, right? He's just one of these guys that the game moves a little bit slower for him than it does for just about everyone else. And those ball skills. And now I think you're really starting to see it. I remember the UCF game, cover 2, had a nasty interception there. And you're talking about this guy who brings the value of like a Trayvon Diggs a couple of years ago, that 11 interception season, but he also gave up like 1,200 yards in coverage, right? So like that's the give and take with a corner like that. Yes, big plays, but also gives up a lot of big plays. D'Angelo Hall before that, in between that, Marcus Peters, these boom bust corners. In a lot of ways, a corner, I think, he gives you the best of both worlds, right? Like playmaking skills and like even a 50-50 ball. You have to rethink that because you don't want to test a good corner, but like a 50-50 ball with him, I'm not sure it's not 60-40, 70-30 in his favor. So I just think he changes the complexity of what you're trying to do as an offense against that guy. It's also both are depth positions, so there's easy ways to get him both onto the field for each one of those. But I just think his ball skills, play, turnover creating machine, and coverage. And then you can also dictate personnel on offense, right? So you have more to say. If he's getting 20 snaps on offense, you have more to say in regards to his threat percentage using a PFF stat there, right? Like we're going to give him 20 routes. And he's going to be the targeted guy on 8 of them. Let's just say if he's open. That's maximizing that. On defense, if he's only playing 20 snaps a game, an offense can just say, we'll run the ball to the other side or we'll throw to the other side, which they may do anyways. But I just think there's more value to be squeezed out of him, so to speak. Full-time corner, 15 to 20 plays on offense, use him for third downs, use him in the red zone, especially like his ball skills and ability to come back to the football in the red zone. I think that plays a ton. So I think that's ultimately his best usage. That being said, the more I watch the kid, like Charles Woodson, Champ Bailey, they were two-way players, sure, but like it's kind of a gimmick, right? Like it's much more gimmicky for them than it is for Travis. And, we'll see. Once we get to the NFL, man, maybe this guy can handle 90 snaps a week, 60 on defense, 30 on offense. Maybe we are talking about a guy who's just breaking the norm, right? I didn't think Shohei Ohtani would come around, and then he did,
Sure.
So maybe Travis Hunter's kind of the first of these just rare athletes that can kind of withhold that. The worry there is like how many hits can you take? And that's also to me the other advantage of defense, right? Like naturally, I think you're just taking a little bit less hits. And therefore you're trying to maximize what you're getting out of him long term. And one last note, really, I think the value of a Travis Hunter, look at the Rams this year. Let's just hypothetically put the Rams with Travis Hunter on that roster. Beginning of the year, you're down Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Travis Hunter's playing receiver. Simple. Like, not a question about it. Now those guys are healthy. If they hypothetically had a Travis Hunter, they need a corner. They're desperate. So then mid-year, you have the flexibility to be able to kind of pivot. Now, that's him knowing both playbooks. That's him being heavily involved in both sides of the ball, meetings, et cetera, et cetera. It's easier said than done. But even if it's not over the course of 1 year, over the course of that 4-year rookie contract, you might really need a receiver those first 2 years, hit on a couple of late round receivers, and then all of a sudden corner's your biggest need. So I just think he provides a whole lot of flexibility. And that's why, not to give away my big board article here in a few weeks, but there's only a couple blue chippers. He's one of them. And he's got to be player number 1 on the board, right? Just because you're talking about CD1, maybe CD2, it's him or Will Johnson there. And then a top 3 corner in this class. And that's just insane value. And then the flexibility it gives you long-term is just immense.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of good info in there. And I think you hit all the things that I would have had as concerns as well.
Sorry, I can be long-winded.
Hey, we brought you on for a reason. We need we need what you have to say here. No problem at all. So I mean, with the playing both sides of the ball, like you mentioned, the wear and tear, that'd be the biggest thing. And then it's hard enough as a rookie, even if you are really, 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 really good and dedicated to one position. And like you mentioned, learning an offense, and who knows, maybe he goes to a place that is not, it might be a relatively brand new head coach or relatively, elevated OC. So a lot of that might depend on that as well. And, if I know I'm going to get a good product out of a guy on one side, and that might happen to be corner most likely, then that's what I'm probably going to do. So that makes sense. And I'm interested to see, that usage. The only other player right now that at least I can think of off the top of my head in the league that kind of goes both ways is like Marcus Jones.
I was hoping you would say Marcus Jones. Man.
Yeah, which everybody is going to be just groaning that I'm mentioning the Patriots again, because I probably mentioned them too much. But a couple years ago, I think he was the only player to score a touchdown on special teams defense and on offense. It was a long time. And so this year he's doing it again.
Right. I remember, it was their only offensive touchdown came from a nickel corner on a screen. And it's like the state of the Patriots.
So I kind of wonder if it's stuff a little bit like that. Where
but even there, you're talking about 5'9", scrappy, small corner versus 6'1", 185, which is lean at receiver. But it's even then, there's not really an apple to apple here for Travis, and that's what, dude.
No,
I'm glad he won the Heisman. Did you have any takes there? Genty versus Trav for the Heisman?
Yeah, honestly, I am kind of only just getting into any of the college stuff. And so I did see all of that, and I know he came in second there, and they have that weighted voting system with you pick 5 when you vote and all of that. And so he certainly got a lot of votes. And I know anybody Genty obviously looks like a really incredible guy from the stuff that I have seen, but I don't have any spicy takes about it. It sounds like you might have some, though. I don't know.
Oh, no, not really. I think it's Travis Hunter's award, right? And that's nothing to take away from GT. Sometimes it doesn't have to be sliders. It doesn't have to be one guy's great, so we take the points away from the other guy. But I will say for GT, just look at archived Heisman Trophy winners. His season probably wins at 5 of the last 10 years or so. That's certainly up for debate. It's certainly subjective, but the Kyler Murray, the Baker Mayfield Heismans, if you just drop Ashton GT's season in one of those years, certainly a big case there too. I also think his case also helps with the fact that they're a top 4 seed in the college football playoff, right? So it would have been interesting to drop him back in years past where it's a 14 college football playoff and just no disrespect to Broncos. There's just no shot in hell that Boise State's going to be in that. What would the narrative have been then? His season still would have been special, but the fact that he got into the playoff this year versus almost certainly wouldn't have been, that would have been interesting to see the narrative there. But still a special season. He's my RB1 in this year's draft class to get ahead of ourselves, but freaky guy. But what an awesome 1-2 there at the Heisman. And dude, Cam Ward, hell of a season. Dylan Gabriel, insane season. He could have won it in a couple other years. Even a Cam Scatabo, I know, was trying to get some Heisman love and try to get that 4th spot, and he's at his 6th season. So it was just a good year for that award.
Yeah, and we will see Scatabo. He just accepted his Senior Bowl invite.
All-Star 2.0, please.
There you go. Yeah, so we'll get to see him in a couple of weeks here. So, all right, you've been mentioning some of the big board stuff, and we're going to get into that here in just a minute. Real quick, we're going to go ahead and take a break to hear from our sponsor.
Hey, I know it's a popular statistic to cite, these underdog pick'ems, the vast majority of people go more than on any given player. Yeah, close to 80% of people, but that's because it's easier to find the shootouts than it is to find the dud games every Sunday afternoon. Like we knew week 5, Ravens-Bengals was going to be a shootout. And there goes Lamar Jackson for 4 touchdowns. There goes Joe Burrow for 5 touchdowns. Derrick Henry gets there. Zay Flowers is over 100 yards. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both got there, as well as Chase Brown. Both Chases got there. You go more than. You 100x your payout on underdog with their pick 6 contest. But then you look at Dolphins Patriots, that's going down the toilet, right? Too bad Ramondre Stevenson at 18 fantasy points. But you improve your chances at positive returns when you correlate with these underdog pick'ems. Use promo code Underworld. This is the biggest bonus Underdog has ever given out, up to $125. Promo code is Underworld. Put in $250, you get $125. Now go start picking.
All right. Thank you to our sponsors there at Underdog. Let's get into the high level overview here. We're calling this like NFL Draft 101. Yeah. TJ, help take us through just kind of a high overview of some of the positions here that you've been looking at, that you're excited about. Maybe not hit everybody, but as we go through, just give us a little bit for those of us who maybe are unfamiliar completely with what is going on with the NFL Draft.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time of the year. There's like one half of like football fandom that's like me and like total degenerates and are just like knee deep into this already. So some of this might be like surface level for those, and I do apologize. But hey, it's the 101 class. We're just getting our feet wet. Obviously, plenty more content to come. And a lot more digging into these specific position groups on the horizon as well. But if you're just kind of stepping into this, maybe, you're not a Giants or a Panthers fan, but maybe your team's kind of getting there to where you see the season, where it's going. So now you're kind of interested in the draft world. So this is just kind of high level where we're starting. Let's begin with quarterbacks. It's not the best position group. I think we can kind of transition to that afterwards, but it's the position group everyone wants to talk about. And I hate to say this, there's only 2 guys I'd take in the first round at the moment. And that sucks to say. And I mean, take it from a Steelers fan, it's not fun when there's a draft class where only 1, maybe 2 guys can go in the first round. And sometimes even in those classes, when you do get that one first rounder, you find a way to piss them off and run them out of town. That being said, that's enough Steelers frustration there. You got your Pats off. Now I got my Steelers. But I got QB1 for me right now is Cam Ward. 5th-year guy at Miami. 6'2", 233. So I like the build inherently right there. And he's also just this guy with an interesting background. I love when Dane Brugler brings this up, Dane Brugler of The Athletic. I think it just gives context, because I think some people will look at him and they'll be like, really, this guy's like a first round? I mean, he's a kind of gunslinger, but he's okay. I've seen some people comp him to like a less talented Patrick Mahomes. And like, there's ways in which I think that's warranted, but also I think that's just kind of a very surface level look at him. To me, he's kind of more Jordan Love, and specifically like Jordan Love this year, maybe, or even like, really more this year than I would say down the stretch last year. But he's this guy with this background of playing an option offense in high school, then gets thrusted into the air raid, which you can't get any more polar opposite than that. But he plays in the air raid at Incarnate Word and then at Washington State. And now he gets to play in a little bit more of a pro style offense at Miami. So like over the course of 5 years, he's gone from option to QB1 in a pro style offense. So like insane when you take that into account. And that's just kind of where I still think the decision-making is coming along. I think he took strides in the right direction this year. But he's this guy with a live arm. And again, the Jordan Love comp to me works. He throws from multiple arm angles. The arm maybe is a little less live than Jordan Love, but that was a huge reason why, first round guy for me coming out of Utah State, Love was. And ultimately, like Love, I mean, Ward probably a little bit of a tier down prospect-wise, but that's easy to say with revisionist history, or at least hindsight. But that being said, functional athleticism, love the arm, and I love the comfortability, right? And like we live in a day and age where improvisation is needed at that position, and he's more than comfortable doing that. The time to throw certainly sometimes can be a little bit concerning, right? And again, decision-making, pick 6 against Cal puts them in a big hole. There's things there, but just even 3 years ago to where he is now, I think he's making strides in the right direction. I'm willing to take a gamble on that arm talent. And then we'll see where it goes, right? Some of this is going to come down to fit. Like if he goes, let's say Brian Daboll stays there with the Giants, I think that's a good fit. But he could also go to a situation like, Trevor Lawrence year 1 gets Urban Meyer. That's just, you burn the year away. Like it's just gone right then and there. And sometimes you just get tough luck like that. So landing spots can be imperative for really both these guys, because then at QB2, Shadir Sanders. And these are 2 guys that if you put them in last year's class, I had Nix, McCarthy, and Rattler kind of in their own tier, like tier 3. these guys are probably in that range for me. And again, Nix has looked awesome, but we're just looking at them solely for what they are as a prospect. It certainly helps being drafted by Sean Payton, but they'd probably be in that mix. I don't think they're on the same level as, Jaden, or certainly not Drake and Caleb in my eyes. But there's still something we work with there. Shadir, again, functional athleticism, that could be a question mark there. The arm strength certainly isn't going to wow you. I think it plays the next level, but he's not going to be a guy that wins by, power throws, to steal a term from Chris Sims, right? He's not going to plant that back foot and just rip one in there. But the accuracy and the touch really has been special for multiple years now. Even just like last year, if you just watch broadcast, the natural feel he has, being able to make layer throws 20 yards down the field over a linebacker, but before the safety, there's just natural instincts there. And he makes sense, obviously coming from a football family. So those are the top two guys. They're going to probably go top 10. I'd probably put them as like a mid to late first round grade. Haven't finalized that. Still got to finish getting all the tape done. Haven't gotten their full tape of the season. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, mid to late first round guys for me. But they're going to probably go top 5. Just given, you look at the board right now, Raiders, Giants, 1-2. Well, there they go. Gone just like that. So things to like about both of them, but there's certainly some limitations that I do worry about at the next level. And it's just going to come down to fit. Like, there's no one guy this year that you're like, Trevor Lawrence will figure this out. Like Caleb Williams will figure this out. There's going to be bumps along the way, but he's too talented. He'll figure it out. I don't think these guys are there. And then after that, I even put in our notes here, like the other guys. It's a drop off, and there's question marks about all of them. And before we even get to that, Drew Aller would have been QB3, but that would have even been like, there's work to be done there. And I'm a huge Drew Aller guy. Pounding the table for him as like a top 3 guy coming into the season. And I love what I saw with him and Kotelnicki this year, the new Penn State OC. And they got some games. Who knows? He might go on a run here with Penn State and decide to declare. But if he's going back, I think that's the best decision. And he could become a player for that number 1 pick next year. Garrett Nussmeier, another name to throw in that mix, plays like a guy whose dad was an NFL, offensive coordinator and QB coach. Like, he definitely has that background. And he's got so much willingness to throw with anticipation. Sometimes a little too willing. Like the South Carolina games, there's some throws in there where you're like, dude, what? Yeah, you could see why a Nate Tice, a Dane Brugler have him at QB1, because it's insane. And then he'll also just throw a fourth quarter interception to almost nobody really at the goal line. And you're like, what? That's how LSU is going to lose this game. Wow. So I think him going back to school, it also helps the number 1 recruit in coming out of high school this year flipped to go to Michigan over, I think, $12 million in NIL. So he was going to go to LSU. He now decides to go to Michigan. And that's a good comfort there for Nussmeier to go back to school. But anyways, finish the point. The other guys. Jalen Milroe's a sick athlete, but it's still work in progress. I think he's gotten better throwing the ball. He's got great deep touch. He's kind of got this Cam Newton thing about him where it's like, or Anthony Richardson, another not necessarily one-to-one comp, but those 60-yard bombs, they don't think about it. They just flick it and it goes, and it's awesome. But that 5-yard hitch on 1st and 10 where you're just looking for a successful start to the drive, that's where it's just not enough layups in there. I do think there was some progress this year, especially throwing over the intermediate parts of the field. They lost to Vanderbilt, but there's a couple of good throws there for Milroe. Just got to keep getting more. And that's why I think ultimately he should go back to school. He's a redshirt junior, so he's leaving himself just one more year where he could do it. But I do think if he reunites with Kalen DeBoer, we'll see some more growth. And the athletic ability is going to be there. If he decides to declare, considering how thin this class is, I don't rule out first round for Jalen Milroe, which I don't love saying. But and honestly, he probably would have been aided by if Anthony Richardson had a breakout season this year, there's probably more talk of Jalen Milroe going ahead, declare, take the athletic traits, and we'll work with it there. But I think Anthony Richardson probably didn't do him any favors there. But work in progress, top of day 2, maybe. Top of the second round, I could see a world where, hey, if Will Levis can go there, I like Will Levis, by the way. I'll put myself under the bus there. But if Will Levis can go top of the second round, it's worth taking a flyer on Milroe there. He's certainly got the athletic traits. Or Malik Willis, 3rd round, bad quarterback class. Had some first round hype that year. Could Milroe go in the 3rd round? And Willis looks pretty good with Matt LaFleur. Could the same work out for a Jalen Milroe? A lot to be figured out there. And then we get Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. Man, this is tough because in a lot of ways, I just want Beck to go back to Georgia and just get more talent around him because I think he played pretty well when he had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. And then points last year where those guys got hurt and he elevated his game. This year, it's just been too up and down. He's had some good halves. I wouldn't necessarily say great games. He's had some great halves. And then there's been really good games with, a sprinkle of both in there, good half and a great half. That also came against some of the weaker points of Georgia's schedule. So that's tough to weigh. And then in their big games, he's had some some iffy moments. And now he's questionable to even play in the quarterfinal of the college football playoff. So he's like, there's just not much work in here in Beck's favor in regards to like forward momentum. He doesn't have the Michael Penix Texas game where you're like, whoa, this guy could do that on that stage, or the CJ Stroud Georgia game where it's like, okay, now we're cooking. Who knows? Maybe he does play against either Notre Dame or Indiana. And if so, two good defenses, especially if he can cook Notre Dame. No bias here, but go Irish. That would be a huge statement. And maybe that would start building confidence. At this point, I really, it's kind of similar to what I said about Penix last year, despite having very different grades on them. I just think if I can find a way to get this guy into like a Shanahan or McVay disciple offense, I think he'll be okay. He'll need playmakers and he'll need engineered open throws right now. That's where I'm kind of at with Carson Beck. I don't see a whole lot of special in him. Elevate the surrounding environments, more so a product of it. But that being said, like if the Rams took him in the second round, sat behind Stafford for a year or two, we might have something here. But yeah, I just wish he wasn't a redshirt senior, man. I think one more year at Georgia, get some better weapons around him. He could get himself back in that first round conversation. And then Quinn Ewers is a redshirt junior, and he's tricky because he ain't going back to Texas. I think that job's been locked up.
Tough cookies there.
Better. So what were you saying?
I just said a tough situation there. Yeah.
And then like a team that could be portals, players in the portal, like UNC, obviously with Bill Belichick there, they've been super active in the portal. They just landed a quarterback. That's probably out of the way now. Notre Dame, maybe I could see that, but I don't think Notre Dame's done a whole lot to elevate quarterbacks. You know, like Sam Hartman didn't get better at being at Notre Dame. Riley Leonard, the results have gotten better, but I don't think he's taken a step forward as a passer. So I don't know if Quinn Ewers is really trying to do that. Really, the place you'd want him to go is Ohio State, and he might have burned that bridge. So he's kind of in a tough spot now. But he's another one of these guys where Texas hasn't thrown the deep ball, so part of it is like the best thing he does hasn't been fully maximized this year at Texas. Could he go and declare in the draft and someone fall in love with the traits? He's a good mobile guy. He's got 6'2", 210. He checks the box there. He's got a great arm. He can push the ball deep. He can make those power throws. There's something there. It's just the consistency is just so up and down. It almost feels like a guy who plays to the level of competition or plays to the hype of the game, right? Like the Michigan game this year. It's like, oh, this is the test. And he plays pretty good. He plays really, really good. But I even say that. Then the Georgia game, he lays an egg. It just wasn't a good game, So he's a tough one to get a read on. And, if he gets drafted by the 49ers and they decide not to pay Purdy or, whatever the hypothetical you want to draw, I'm in. But if he goes in the third round to the team that missed out on the musical chairs, like I'm just trying to think about who that could potentially be. Let's just say it's the Raiders again. Let's just, for whatever reason, they win a game and they don't get a quarterback in the first round. I'm not sure I love that, or like an Aaron Rodgers contingency for the Jets. It's like, not sure I love that. Or a Geno contingency in Seattle. I'm not really seeing it. So he's super landing spot dependent, but just such an inconsistent player. And then you get a bunch of other guys who I think are day three dudes. Curtis Rourke, he's got a big game here in a few minutes. Kyle McCord's kind of the interesting one because the man has just found a way to become like College Jameis, where he's going to – a lot of big plays, a lot of head scratchers too. And he's almost just kind of like the day three version of Cam Ward in that respect in a lot of ways. But I think he made himself some money this year. I think coming into the season, he leaves Ohio State. It's kind of a tainted situation for him. But I think this year he's definitely put himself in that at least like round 4 mix. And then Jackson Dart, he comes from a super gimmicky offense. No disrespect to Lane Kiffin. He's like, it's great for college, but Matt Corral didn't last in the league. Dart, I think, has a better natural. I think he's a better natural throw of the football. I think he's a better quarterback. But that just might mean he won't burn out in 2 years like Corral did. And then the last one I want to throw in here is Riley Leonard. Jim Nagy, he kind of caught me off guard. He said this on the PFF NFL or a college football podcast. He's saying that he's getting a bunch of day 2 grades for Riley Leonard, and he's going to be someone at the Senior Bowl. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Another guy we're going to see at the Senior Bowl, super old guy, but Tyler Shook. Big-armed, statuesque type of quarterback. Mobility's not great, but like day 3, ready to go backup quarterback in a run-heavy offense where you're going to run the ball, play action. Like if the Steelers took him in the 6th round, they only got Russell Wilson, they let Fields go. Tyler Shook could be someone in their mind is like a 6th round guy. So wanted to throw him out there. Tyler Van Dyke, he's had moments, but at best a day 3 guy. So that's the quarterbacks. I could talk on and on and on about a disappointing class. Thank goodness for the sake of the time of this one that it's not a great class because we'd be here all day. But if you're ready, any thoughts on the quarterbacks or anything you want to hit on there?
Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned it. So we'll also see Dylan Gabriel from Oregon there.
Gabriel. Throw him in that
Yeah.
mix. He's just small, and he just doesn't have a great arm. But when
Mhm.
it comes to accuracy, one of the best in this class, willing thrower when it comes to throwing with anticipation, good touch. I just worry about how much that arm limits him.
Well, I got him drafted in the first round of my college football 25 league. So,
There you go.
don't put
Stats play
anything
there. Stats play.
past the people. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, and we'll just gently review. Gently review. I don't know if that's a thing people say. We'll do a quick overview just of the quarterback needy teams here, like you mentioned in the draft. You got like Las Vegas at 1 right now. This all according to Tankathon, by the way. Check them out at tankathon.com. Not a sponsor. New York Giants at 2. They both only have 2 wins, and then we got a bunch of people stacked at 3 wins. Possibly Tennessee currently sitting at 6, Cleveland at 7. I could see you mentioned the Jets, of course, depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers, or maybe not, depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers. New Orleans, not a super quarterback needy team. Maybe do something crazy though. I doubt Indy does it, but you could see something happen there. And then for the most part, until you get down nobody else is really standing out to me too much. Is there anybody that I missed that like could shock somebody further down the board?
We'll see what happens with the Steelers. That one's just tough because they're both on 1-year deals. So we'll see where that ends up going. The Purdy situation in San Francisco, they probably pay him. But it kind of hit on that. Yeah, if the Raiders and Giants are 1-2, it's shittier to the Raiders. It's Cam Ward to the Giants. I think those fits also make sense given the current coaching staffs. Both of those could be gone, but I also think stylistically and then like what I know of the personalities, I think that fits. Sam Darnold's going to get a bag from somewhere. Right now, I think Tennessee makes the most sense. We'll see. I could see a world where Minnesota doesn't let him leave. But if they do, I think Tennessee right now, like Brian Callahan's going to say, we're not in a spot to draft one. Go give me the 24-year-old Sam Darnold. Like he's just as young as any of these guys, or 25-year-old Sam Darnold, whatever he is now. But he's a young and up-and-coming guy who's coming off his best year. He's going to get it back from somewhere. I think Tennessee makes a lot of sense.
And you mentioned, wow, now Will Levis in Tennessee. Who knows that they, want to, if they get the opportunity to make the decision again. If they want to make the same type of decision with the guy at the top of the second or the back of the first, do you really want to take that risk?
I doubt it, right? Like when teams fire a coach, they tend to just hire the polar opposite. Like we got this old school defensive guy. Now we got to get the savvy young offensive dude. I think they shot their shot with the second round. Hey, let's see what Will Levis is. They kind of did it before that with Malik Willis, the third round gamble. I think at this point they're like, let's go get something more set in stone. Let's go get a guy with some experience. Sam Darnold makes a lot of sense. And again, part of it will come down to what the league feels about Jalen Milroe. If he decides to declare, if Aller goes on a heater, he's going top 10. Like it's just going to happen. If he has 2 sick college football playoff games, he's going top 10. So maybe he's in the mix as well. So still some TBD to be figured out there. But also like Kirk Cousins is going to get moved. Like I've been kind of waiting for this to happen. Once they made honestly, by like week 6, just watching the Falcons offense, I was like, I feel like this would fit more with Penix, and maybe that's just because they're not doing a whole lot of under center. They're not doing a whole lot of play action, which was what Kirk has made his money off of. But like that could make sense. But someone's gonna give Kirk a shot. So the Jets are really the enigma, right? Like, do they make the offensive hire, like an offensive-minded head coach, and then Rodgers kind of bows down to that? Because if so, I'm willing to see another year of it, which I know most Jets fans aren't. But like as a non-Jets fan, I'm down for one more go at the rodeo. But yeah, that's the team. Because then if he retires, then it's like, oh, okay. And maybe that's the team that says, hey, Milroe in the second round. We'll start Tyrod for a year. We'll see where this goes. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, we could see what happens there. It's going to partly depend on Rodgers, and he's doing the whole, like, I'm going to go into a cave and think about it and eat, a half a bowl of rice every day while I dose myself with something. So, I think... And I keep losing my train of thought here. So it's been a long week, guys. You got to forgive me here. We've got that game coming up, and I want to get you rolling to that at some point here. But
totally. But I can go to the next position group if you're ready to move on.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the defensive line. I think is what we had loaded up next here. So take us through just a quick overview: interior, edge, depth, and then we'll move into running backs and so on.
Yeah, I'll be much more brief here. We'll have individual podcasts about these specific positions. So if there's something you want me to hear, you want me to expand upon, definitely come back for those. Or you can feel free to DM me. I'm happy to respond to some answers or some questions there. But D-line, Mason Graham, top interior defensive lineman for me, pretty much since day one. He actually opened the year as my number one player as the big board. Didn't quite have the Quinnen Williams type of last year I was hoping he would have. So he's not going to be one of my blue chippers, but he is right there knocking on the door. And maybe with a little bit more time, I'll change my mind there. But he's definitely IDL 1, day 1 impact guy. Can play the 1, can play the 3 tech, which if you don't know what that means, it just means he could play head up with the center, or he could play, kind of that 3 tech spots between the guards, so to speak. I think he's got the run stopping potential and the pass rush upside to do that. Walter Nolan, Ole Miss, really athletic player, was actually the top rated recruit coming out of high school over said Travis Hunter. So he's got this insane background and pedigree, and it just didn't really work out at A&M. He was a part of those like big Jimbo Fisher classes that like, oh, Jimbo, it's going to come together, and it just never did. And I think leaving A&M was one of the best decisions he could make. I think coaching plays a huge part in the scouting process, and I think you see that with Mike Elko, even just at Ole Miss, where I'm getting ahead of myself with the A&M guys. But just going to Ole Miss, getting away from the disaster that was the Jimbo Fisher era at A&M, you just see he's more of a 3 tech. He's probably not going to be a high level, 1 tech at the next level, not going to play the nose, but he does play the run pretty well. 305 pounds, about the benchmark you want there at that 3 tech spot, but super quick. The hand usage is there. Breakout season that we've been kind of waiting for. And I think that paired with the recruiting background, he's probably in that first round mix. Then we get Derek Harmon. He was one that I was pretty slow to come around to, but I'm starting to see it. He shaved off 10 pounds as he made the transfer from Michigan State to Oregon. I think that's paid off. You see the first step quicks. I will say down the stretch, though, I think the tape it's gotten a little weaker. And part of that is probably just the attention, right? Like you get midway through the season and all of a sudden Derek Harmon's on everyone's radar. So teams are starting to key in and focus on him too. So do want to give him a little bit of a break there. Still more tape to watch for sure. Then you get Alfred Collins, who is this 5th-year guy at Texas who was just shoved in a closet last year because he was playing behind 2, top 50 players, and including my top defensive player at last year's class, and Byron Murphy. But dude, he's taken full advantage of his opportunity here this year. 320 pounds, and he doesn't look it from that first step get off. Like tons of explosiveness, and very violent and very physical player. And great punch with his hands too. So he's kind of got this jack of all trades thing kind of working for him. He's a bit older, and he's kind of 1 year worth of production. I do think teams will look past that. Kind of like Jonathan did, very different players, very different positions, but like Jonathan Brooks, kind of a 1 year wonder at Texas, but he was still RB1 just because the dude could play and the guys ahead of him were insane. I'm hoping Alfred Collins gets that same sort of nudge here, just on the other side of the ball at Texas. And the last thing to throw out there for first round, like guys at IDL that I think definitely get that first round mix. Kenneth Grant, Bruce Feldman, number 2 on his freaks list, if my memory holds, but he was definitely a Feldman freak list guy. 6'3", 339, and you want to talk about quick movers? My Lord, dude. The guys at 340 should not be, and I'm not even just talking about fast, but quick. Like this guy's very agile, very shifty, and I think you see that especially in the run game, right? Like can shed blocks, get to the backfield instantly. I think the pass rush is still kind of a work in progress, but he's one of these guys that, like, I say this about Vita Vea all the time. With what you do as a run stopper, awesome. We're already starting on a great note. If I could just have you push the center into the quarterback's lap 3 times a week, just 3 times, you're giving me all I need in pass protection. And at 340, he should be able to do that. So I think it's just kind of learning that side of the ball or that side of the game at the next level that maybe you see that pass rush jump forward. So yeah, it's a really good interior offensive line class. The D-line to me is the best part of this year's class. If you have a team that's looking for edge, IDL, this is the year for it. That and then running back and tight end, which we'll talk about in a moment. For edge 1 for me, Abdul Carter. He's another one of these guys that's knocking on the door to be a blue chipper. He would be number 3 on my big board if I had to call it today. And I don't know if I'd make him a blue chipper just yet, but it's close, man. And I was even just re-looking at it this past weekend. First game as a full-time edge rusher against West Virginia. They come out and they pulling guards, a couple screens in his direction, and he's just not like headily aware. He's just not looking for it because he's new to it. But you still see first step explosiveness. Okay, this guy's twitchy. This guy's faster. He's moving quicker than most people. And he's got violent punches with his hands. So, like, there's definitely something there. And then you fast forward to the Ohio State game. And granted, he was playing, a pretty banged up Ohio State offensive line by that point of the year. But they start throwing screens in his direction. He's looking for it. And he's making plays. And he's almost getting his hand on it. And you just see over the course of 6 games or whatever it was, he's figuring it out from the position standpoint. Oh, and the hand placement's getting that much better. He's already got a great punch, and now he's starting to add some moves to it. Like this guy with how explosive he is on the outside, just a couple of inside counters, and he's going to have dudes. He's going to have just about anything he needs. He's listed at 250 pounds. I'll be curious to see if that's the official weight at the combine. Does look a little lighter than that, but I also think he plays the run bigger than his size, and part of that probably comes from the off-ball linebacker background. I think he just has a good understanding of leverage, and also just like a sure tackler, right? Like sometimes you just get more reps at that at linebacker than you will for a full-time D lineman. Not as many opportunities there versus linebacker flowing the ball every play. So that then leads us into, I didn't think this would happen. If you asked me 3 months ago, this guy would be edge 2, I told you you're crazy. But part of it's because he's a hybrid off-ball linebacker, hybrid edge. The more I watch of Jalen Walker from Georgia, the more I fall in love with this player. He's another one of these off-ball linebacker to edge type of guys. They need to just play full-time at edge. Like that at the college football playoff, he just needs full-time edge. Super explosive. Like, oh my God, that first step is crazy.
I'm hearing Micah Parsons.
Yeah, both these guys are kind of in that Parsons mold for sure. And sometimes it's tough too, right? Like you do these rankings and you definitely have a flavor, right? Like I like route running type of receivers. I like twitchy first step guys at edge. That being said, we're going to talk about another guy here who's not quite that, but has a different build than Nick Scorton. But dude, the more I watch Jalen Walker, the more I am loving it. Against Clemson, and this is just to back up the point, he's 245, maybe a little bit less than that, but he holds up against the run. There's a play in the third quarter against Clemson. They run a quarterback option. Klubnik keeps it, and he's got a guard catching up to him from the backside, blatantly holding him, just blatantly holding half of his body. He's being pulled down, and he makes a one-arm tackle on Klubnik with the other. Just doing it simultaneously like he's freaking Santa Claus, bearing down all the gifts. Insane. And you're like, yeah, this guy's 245, but he plays bigger than that. So the natural play strength's there to where I'm not worried about him against the run. And then the Texas game. Dude, I'm out here trying to watch Michael Williams, and all I can see is Jalen Walker stealing the show in that game. So the more I watch of him, the more I think he plays the edge, the better he gets at it. He's adding some more moves, kind of like Abdul Carter. He's just adding a little bit more nuance into his game. And with the athletic profile, yeah, sign me up. These are two guys that, like, if you're looking for juice at the edge, they have it in abundance. So Jalen Walker right now, my edge 2, I would not have said that coming into the season. Nick Scorton, very different type of player, 6'4", 285. So, like, if you're looking, 4-3 base defense, this is your guy. Really solid against the run, long arms, plays with a ton of power. And he's 285, though, but he's nimble. He's nimble for 285. He's got a spin move. He's got some inside swims. Don't count him out from that standpoint. So he gives you a little bit of both. I think the high end for the other two guys, Carter and Walker, is a little more present there. But that being said, at 240, 245, there might be teams that don't want to play these guys against the run. 285, Scorton's playing 3 downs guaranteed. After Scorton, James Pierce Jr., he's the ultimate, like, this guy's thin. Like, I was watching his 2023 tape, and I was like, who put this safety on the D-line? Like, he looks noticeably small. Or not even small. He looks noticeably thin. So that's going to be the big question mark. It does look like he's gotten a little bit bigger this season, but that's going to be the huge question mark. But he's got the best first step, and he's got the best bend in this class. Maybe Jalen Walker's got him in that race for first step, but and Carter in that mix as well. But like bend, natural, Pierce has got it there. And it certainly helps being 6'5", 240, right? Like you kind of got that slender man build. You can get a little bit more ankle flexion there. You can get underneath some tackles though. But to me right now, he's just not moving the needle in the run game. So right now, if you're drafting James Pierce Jr., you're drafting him as like a DPR type. He's playing third downs. He's playing in the fourth quarter when you're up by 10. He's got to be a situational guy. He's going to be damn good at it, but he's still a situational guy. And then Shamar Stewart, the guy I mentioned off rip, dude, 6'6", 290. He needs to get better at finishing plays for sure. But dude, that length, the power, and another one of these guys from A&M that he's 290, but don't count him out. The feet move very quick. And again, he's got a couple of inside counters. He's got a spin on tape that, isn't super fluid, but you're like at 290, the fact you're willing to bust that out of your bag says a lot. So I'm a big Shamar Stewart guy. And I've said this to you. I think at the Senior Bowl, he could be this year's Darius Robinson, right? You get him in those one-on-one drills, his power and his play strength at 290 plus freakishly long arms, he's going to win a lot of those one-on-one reps. And he's going to be a guy that, oh, you know what? Let me go back and check out that tape. And then people are going to start to see, yeah, he's only got a handful of sacks, but he could have had, 4 or 5 other ones if he, just wrapped up this play or was a step faster, whatever the case may be. Or if Nick Scorton didn't come in and swoop it away from him, and, things like that. So big fan of Shamar Stewart. I think he's going to be a big riser as this process goes on.
Yeah, I think there's already
been.
Sorry. I think we had a little bit of a lag on my end, and so I thought you were done talking there. I think we're going to have a pretty deep defensive line class at the Senior Bowl from what I'm looking at, and that's not counting anybody else who has yet to accept. So,
dude, yeah, and we still got invites rolling in. Last two guys I want to say for edge first round guys, Michael Williams is going to go in the first round. In a lot of ways, he's a better Trayvon Walker. Now, that's not to say that he should go number 1 overall. I just think if you redraft that draft, Trayvon Walker, let's just say simply put, does not go number 1 overall, especially if it's not Trent Baalke at the GM spot in Jacksonville. But, mid to first round, a team, especially a team that doesn't have a pressing need right away, like layup here, he's a first round Georgia guy. If the Philadelphia Eagles want to have him as their Brandon Graham replacement, I'm fully on board for it. But I do think it needs to come to a team that got some, or even like the Bills back into the first round. They've got some guys there. They wouldn't need to rush him into that spot, but they've had success taking a guy like Greg Rousseau who plays and wins with length and trying to do the same thing with Michael Williams. That'd be an interesting landing spot. And then Mike Green. Mike Green, I just kind of wanted to save it because he's a small school guy. And also there's not a whole lot of tape of Marshall that I have yet, but what's there for 6'4", 248, also product of the Commonwealth of Virginia, had to shout him out. First step, check that box. And again, another one of these guys that plays way bigger at 248. And you may say, okay, well, that's at Marshall, right? Like 248 at Marshall probably does play. One of his best games of the year is against Ohio State. So I don't want to hear it. So I think this guy's going to be a first rounder. And this is another one of these, like the Lions back into the first round, the Bills back into the first round, the Chiefs if they want more ammo. Like this guy, and he may 248 the NFL level, maybe he is only a specialist. But if that's his range, those 3 teams will take a pass down winner, just a pass down specialist. So did want to get Mike Green out there. I'm really excited to get to watch more of him. And then a couple other guys just real quick. Deion Walker's interesting. He's kind of a depth piece, disappointing year, but super athletic. My 2 Notre Dame guys have both taken a step back this year, but Riley Mills, Howard Cross, can they do something down the stretch? Josiah Stewart's an awesome pass rusher at edge, but he's small. So he's probably like a 3rd round guy, pass down specialist, but I'm a big Josiah Stewart fan. I actually don't hate him in the second. Landon Jackson, another Senior Bowl guy, 6'7", 280 with freaky long arms. So I'm really excited to see him as well. He could be another Shamar Stewart type of riser at the Senior Bowl. Anyways, tons of names. I promise that will be the longest log jam of names I give you this entire pod. But if I didn't sell you on this D-line class right there, I don't know what will, because all those guys to me are first round dudes up until the depth pieces that I just named. But it's a crazy good class.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no short of need for that in the NFL. So I'm excited to see where those guys go. I mean, we just saw Christian Barmore. He may not be back for the Patriots. He's a big deal. Again, another Patriots take there. So for those of you who are, keeping track of that, yeah, lots of names there. And as you mentioned, we're going to dig into all of these guys more specifically as we continue moving on.
Yeah, and I mean, you even just look at the value of these contracts, right? Like Christian Wilkins, most recent example. These guys are making good money because teams are figuring it out. Hey, quickest path from A to B is a straight line. And that guy from the interior, get to the quarterback, he's got the cleanest path. And also, it's just a force multiplier effect. Like Aaron Donald just takes so much attention that Leonard Floyd could have an 11-sack season just because he's winning a bunch of one-on-ones and he's a good enough athlete to do that. So this interior defensive line class is going to definitely have a lot of teams interested just because he's a cheap player at that position, but also the impact it has on the defense. All right, let's get into running backs. Again, we'll kind of keep this brief. Ashton GT, not going to shock anybody here. He's my RB1. And the more I watch of him, the more comfortable I am saying the comp is LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't normally love comps just because I think they're kind of misleading. And you may think a guy plays a certain way in college, but he plays completely different in the NFL, i.e. Rashee Rice. That's like the most recent example I can think of that. But, dude, running back's a little more straightforward because it's kind of WYSIWYG. You see what you get. Ashton Jeanty's awesome, man. They haven't even used him as a pass catcher this year, but he is just so – I don't think he's the best running back prospect I've seen, but, like, his build makes it certainly close. Kind of got that prototypical short, stubby, bouncy guy, but long speed, shifty, contact bounce. He checks all those boxes. I got Amarian Hampton at RB2. He's not quite the prospect I thought Javonte Williams was coming out of UNC, but downhill, physical runner. If I can find a way to get this guy on the Chargers, just imagine Gus Edwards with like some refined juice. We might have something there. I say that as a Kamani Vidal fantasy owner and dynasty owner, so maybe not. Caleb Johnson, a bit of a blend of both worlds, but he's still probably more of a gap scheme downhill runner, but he's had an awesome year this year at Iowa, and he's got plenty of long speed to take to the next level too. The 2 Ohio State guys, Quinshaw Judkins, Travion Henderson. I'm a little more biased towards Henderson just because I followed him a little closer in high school. But he's kind of the home run threat. Judkins certainly has long speed, but I think a little bit more power into his game. But ideally, in a perfect world, you don't have these two in the same backfield like Ohio State does. I don't think that quite worked out the way they wanted to. In a perfect world, these are both like your home run threats next to an Amarian Hampton, a Gus Edwards, these power back types. So if you're just looking for this type of big play threat, that flavor, especially like a Travion Henderson, if he goes to a one-cut team, the Minnesota Vikings in the third round, just let him take Cam Akers' spot and have some fun. That'd be a lot of really exciting plays there. Cam Scatabo, dude. And again, I said it earlier, Mike Allstott. I don't think it's Mike Allstott for the comp, but like I've seen some people comp Isaiah Pacheco, dude, with the running style and how violent they are. I don't hate that whatsoever. But obviously, he's going to be a fun player to watch in the college football playoff. Kyle Monangai from Rutgers, another downhill power runner. Taj Brooks, same breed. And then Rocket Sanders from South Carolina. Felt like he finally had the year I've been waiting for him to have. I thought he would do it at Arkansas. Felt like this year, and it's not always like 5, 6, 7 yards at a time for him. Sometimes he hits a wall, but then he'll break off that 80-yarder, and he's just so big, but yet he just glides away from people. It's just a natural fast dude. Kind of almost like Derrick Henry, where it's like he gets that full head of steam, and then you're like losing track of the fact that he's outrunning guys because he's so big. But yeah, like Rocket Sanders there as well. Let's stay on offense, and then I'll jump over to corners real quick. Tight end's a really great one. It's going to be a fun debate. Colston Loveland versus Tyler Warren. I think right now I still got Loveland at tight end 1. It's just a little tough because the production just isn't fair. He plays on an offense that doesn't have consistent quarterback play. Tyler Warren is Penn State's offense, and he has a future probable first-round pick at quarterback. So he's got a good guy getting the football, and he's the only guy to get the football too, him and Nick Singleton. So he's got an advantageous situation. Loveland's situation's working against him. You just got to weigh what you want there. I think Loveland's probably the better inline blocker, but that's going to be an interesting one there too. Warren is massive, like 6'6", 250, like big human being and super athletic there. So clear cut top 2 guys, but there's also a lot of depth. Harold Fannin, he kind of runs like a penguin, but other than that, he's awesome. And he comes from a smaller school. But the production.
How does a penguin run?
Waddle, I should say. He's just got like an interesting build. He's just a little like I say this with all due respect. If I ever see Harold Fannin in the street, you have full permission to slap me upside the head for saying this. But he's just kind of like shorter and stubbier, so it kind of looks a little waddly. But he's awesome. I say all that. He's kind of Jonnu Smith in a lot of, not necessarily in a lot of ways, but like not going to play in line, not going to be a special blocker, but play him as an H-back and have some fun and just let this guy get in open space. Put him against a linebacker. He's way more athletic than those guys. He'll get open. Honestly, I think my tight end 3 right now, as much as I do like Harold Fannin, I think it's Mason Taylor. The more I watch Mason Taylor, and obviously son of Jason Taylor, dude, it's 6'5", just a fluid athlete. Like you lose sight of his top end speed just because it doesn't look like he's trying. And it could change directions there too. Yeah, and it got a nice understanding against zone coverage. And that's like the big thing for me at tight end. If you're a good athlete, you'll beat man. You'll get open. Can you get open against zone? Where's your football IQ at? And Mason Taylor checks the box there. That guy's got a great understanding of leverage, finding a soft spot in the zone, coming back to the football. He checks all the boxes there for me. Gunnar Helm, we're going to get to see him at the Senior Bowl. He's Texas receiver, and he's got a big game up ahead, obviously, with the college football playoff in Clemson. But if there's no Isaiah Bond for the Texas offense, they're going to need Gunnar Helm to be a big part of that offense. And it's going to be a huge test there for him. Another super athletic tight end, Elijah Arroyo. He can block. I'm honestly surprised people aren't talking about him a little bit more. I love Jordan Reed for pounding the table for Elijah Arroyo. I've been kind of waiting for him to kind of break out. Also, if you're looking for a cheat code in college football 25, Elijah Arroyo, that's your dude. Nobody that type of athleticism at tight end plays. But yeah, great seam runner, nuanced route runner, big frame, wide catch radius, can hold up as a blocker. This is where like it's going to be great for whoever gets Tyler Warren in the first round or Colston Loveland in the first round. But a team's going to come away with a Gunnar Helm in the third or an Elijah Arroyo in the fourth, and they're going to be just as happy because, like, honestly, the value is in a lot of ways just as good. And then I wanted to throw out Bryson Nesbitt. He's kind of a seam runner. He's kind of like a jet in a waiting. Like I feel like that's an Aaron Rodgers type of dude right there. And then Mitchell Evans. He's not a great athlete, but like you almost want to pair him with like a Harold Fannin because he can play the end line. He'll do the dirty work. Sure-handed, not going to wow you with athleticism, but then that frees up someone like a Harold Fannin to be like an Isaiah Likely get him off the line of scrimmage. If he's going to have to block, get him a head start at doing that. That's the ideal spot for those two guys. But Mitchell Evans, not quite. I was hoping as a Notre Dame fan, like he'd ascend to tight end too, but didn't quite happen this year. Probably more of a round 3 guy. And then to kind of round it out, corner's really deep. Corner's really, really deep. I think right now I got Travis Hunter at CB1, to be honest with you. I just think the playmaking ability is just something you can't overestimate. I think the growth of analytics in sports we've seen specifically in basketball and football, the value of a possession and the possessions he's going to garner you with his ball skills. I just think you can't overlook that. So I got Travis CB1, but like Will Johnson, top 5 player on my big board, knock on the door to be a potential blue chipper. He's awesome as well. And I said this on my YouTube channel. There was no reason for him to come back with the injury. Like there was just no incentive for him to do that. So I'm glad that he is honestly like turning his focus to the next level because he could have declared last year and been ready to go. Other corners to know though, Siobhan Ravel right now would probably be my CB3. There wasn't a game on ECU schedule this year that was going to change your mind. So he had a pick 6 and then followed it up, I think the next drive by tearing his ACL. If it wasn't that next drive, it was shortly thereafter. So that's disappointing. But like, again, not a game on ECU schedule that was going to change your mind about him. You were either going to like him and see the athlete, the ball skills, the physicality that he has, or you were going to see the ECU corner. And I think especially after watching Quinyon Mitchell and the success he's had, it helps being drafted by, a Vic Fangio defense. That certainly goes a long way. That guy knows how to coach up DBs. But that guy, you watch the film and he's 12 yards off the line of scrimmage because screw it, he could. He could get away with something like that. You don't do that at the NFL level, but you can at Toledo. Siobhan Ravel is kind of that same thing where it's like, this dude doesn't belong at this level of comp. He's just transcending this. And I'm willing to say that he'll be able to hold his own at the next level. I would love to see a world where I can partner him up with Marshawn Lattimore in Washington. That's like been one of my favorite, like get him right there mid to late first round, learn from Lattimore. That'd be like most ideal man coverage system. I would love to see that. Also want to shout out Benjamin Morrison. Would love to have him tonight. But that hip injury scares me. So that's the only reason he's not my CB3 right now. I just need more information on that. Like hip fluidity is such a huge part of corner, right? Like flipping your hips and running downfield. And if that's going to be a nagging injury, an injury that takes away some of his top end speed, that's going to change the profile there a little bit. And also he is on the lighter side. Run stopping was not going to be his forte. He wasn't going to be a high end tackler or anything like that for you. So all that said, if the hip injury comes into play, we're kind of losing the reason why you draft Ben Morrison. Jahdae Barron, dude. And I'll say no one values a nickel corner like me. So I'm hoping Jahdae Barron plays the slot at the next level, but he's got starting experience at Texas at safety, nickel, and this year at outside corner where he's been fantastic. 5'11", 190 pounds. So he's a little bit smaller, but like checks the boxes still. Trey Amos plays great man coverage right now for Ole Miss. I sometimes worry about man coverage specialist corners at the next level because even the most man-heavy defense is still going to run a lot of zone, primarily running zone. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve there, but kind of like Tyrion Arnold this year where like great man coverage, kind of figuring out the rest. Trey Amos may have the same career arc, but I'm still willing to take that risk. And then Darian Porter, former receiver, turned corner. That's a path that I'm interested in. And he's 6'4", which you will learn. Tall corners are that is my crutch. I will fall for it every time. Tall corner, I'm in. So Darian Porter, his ball skills definitely play like former corner. And then the last one I want to talk about, Maxwell Hairston. He got hurt in the middle of this year, and it's been a little up and down. It definitely feels like, injury bug has been there. But zone fluidity and where his eyes are at, like, again, instincts are there. Can play the ball, knows how to play the receiver, a little bit on the shorter side, but not like an outlier or anything like that. So a Buffalo Bills, like second round, Maxwell Hairston, like I would love to see that type of a scheme. That's kind of where I'm thinking, like cover 2, cover 4 heavy. Let this guy kind of play in space, use his natural zone instincts and fluidity there. But there we go. Those are some of the best position groups. Those are just some of the names. We've still stretched this out for an hour. I warned you before we started. I was like, dude, I'm telling you, I could be long-winded, even if we're trying to keep it surface level. But hopefully that's just incentivizing for people to watch more draft content. If this guy's surface level is 1 hour, geez, we're going to get into the weeds when we get into the actual position breakdowns.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. There's certainly, you mentioned a lot of names, and we didn't even hit safety or offensive line.
Offensive line, yeah.
So
receiver,
yeah. How did I miss that? We didn't even do that. So there's going to be a lot more to come, guys. But yeah, we just wanted to give a brief overview and have TJ take us through some of the things and the positions specifically that he felt like were bringing the most kind of in this draft as a whole, just to go over them a little bit. So, or as I said earlier, go over them gently, whatever that means. So,
but the good news is next Friday, we're planning to have my first mock out. So like this is your entryway in. Next week we get into the meat and potatoes. That's what everyone wants. So I'm really excited to break that down.
Yeah. Mock drafts, everybody loves those. And so I'll be interested, we'll have a little bit better picture of what that is going to look like. Again, we have a lot of competition for those top 10 picks. Who can lose the most down the stretch here? So if you are tracking with us, I would appreciate it, of course, after Christmas. Just a reminder to everybody who is out there, you're going to find more of TJ's content on our website. We'll be dropping the new website here eventually when we get it all wrapped up and in tip-top shape for you guys. But right now you can find tools for this season and eventually for this coming season at tools.32beatwriters.com. And we'll have the build your board, as we mentioned, over there, as well as TJ's draft analysis. TJ, is there any last things you have for us before we leave?
Well, first show in the books with 32 beat writers, man. I'm so pumped up to be able to get to do this. I'm excited to be able to expand, from like my own YouTube channel into a bigger community. And man, I just think this offseason, like, I don't have to say this. If you're watching an hour and a minute into this video, you like 32 beat writer content. But if you're someone who's just stumbling upon this for the first time, between the offseason free agent coverage that 32 beat writers has, and then like me coming on to hopefully give you the best draft analysis possible, the offseason, like, this is your home. So like, I am so excited to get started. We're not that far away. It's going to be a big, really exciting spring. And man, I can't wait for the Senior Bowl. I can't wait for the combine, the draft. I'm pumped up for the whole thing.
Yeah, me too. You can count all of us in there. And yeah, if you're listening this far or watching this in general, you're a part of the Sicko Club. And if you want to be a further part of that, if you're watching this on Player Profiler, you can certainly follow us at 32 Beat Writers on Twitter if you didn't already know that. Find us at 32beatwriters.com. Find our tools, rankings, love, hate, implied totals, and 2025 draft tracker for those of you who play Dynasty, as well as our most recent articles and everything else over there. For TJ, for Matt, and everybody else on the 32 Beat Writer staff, I'm Zach Hyduk, and we will see you guys next time.